Welcome, everybody. You are in Critique of Common Game Mechanics, which is what I called Theme and Mechanics and did yesterday. So today I'm finally right. Welcome, I'm glad you're here. I am your moderator. My name is Christopher Baxter. I write for a local company called Sparrow Gameworks, a video game group, and I have occasionally lectured on video games and video game writing at LTUE here. So those are my qualifications and my companions. I'll start with Maddie.
Okay, my name is Maddie Murdock. I am a gaming writer. I most recently worked for Alderek Entertainment Group on their Legend of the Five Rings brand, which is a RPG and card game and foreign game and LARPing and whatever. So that's what I've done for the last little bit, and I now work for Fantasy Flight Games doing the same thing. From the D.
My name is Bacera, and I write military fantasy, and so I actually have a magic system based off video games, as probably a lot of us do. And I was a beta writer for a game called Sanctuary RPG that went to Steam Greenlight 2 years ago. And I also just play too much video games.
There's no such.
If only that were true.
Not according to my dance station. Anyway, right. So, critique of common game mechanics. This is a really vague topic with a lot of wiggle room. So, I kind of want to get some cues from you guys. What kind of games are you looking at? We can cover tabletop RPGs. I'm sure we've all played plenty of board games and card games. Maybe had a hand in designing some of those, and obviously video games. We've got plenty of know-how in. So, does anyone have any really strong preferences that they'd like to hear about first? Common game mechanics. Would you like to hear critiqued?
Is anybody here actually making a game, and that's why they're here?
Sort of. I haven't done a lot of work on it in a while, but it's a video game.
So it's a video game.
We got a video game. How about you, Mike?
Video game.
Video game. All right. Well, then that kind of begs like the initial question: do you know what genre this video game is gonna be in?
Yes, sort of. I have actually two games that are in the sort of works. One is a side-scroller, patterned after heavily after Metroid, and the other is a 3D patterned also heavily off of Metroid, closer to the Primes, but not quite. It would be a little bit of a mix between the Primes and Zelda.
Oh, okay. So kind of some platforming, Metroidvania, maybe a bit of RPG.
Lots of platforming, but also there's a money system in the 3D.
Okay. Okay, so yeah, getting a little RPG again sounds like. What's yours?
My husband and I are working on a kind of a 2D top-down adventure game right now. I've got a couple other ones kind of in the works in the future. But
Okay, so is that more kind of, were you trending towards RPG, or is it more of an action sort of thing?
RPG one.
Okay, okay. Anyone else have anything they want to, yeah?
We're just doing a tabletop/card game.
Excellent, okay, so we'll be sure to include that then. Yes?
Tabletop, kind of a hybrid tabletop that people can play it through on video. And is that, Marie, is that what you said your company does? You combine video and card?
We don't do video, but that would be interesting for you to explore. We do like live action LARPing, on forum LARPing, role playing games and card games as well. But we don't have a video component.
Could I ask a really dumb question, I guess? What do you mean by mechanics?
That's actually a great question.
That's a great primer question, huh?
So, mechanics, the basic elements of your game that make it function. So, anything that is not, it's not artwork, it's not music, it's not any of that. It's not a physical asset of an RPG, like a card or something. Is probably a mechanic. Dice rolling is a mechanic in tabletop RPGs. Card drawing, drawing a certain number of cards, having a hand. These are all mechanics. Jumping, platforming, the jump is a mechanic. Anything that you can actively do within a game is a mechanic.
So I heard
that really helps with
I'm glad.
I heard a developer of Blizzard call it like this, that a game mechanic basically is a task that you need the player to accomplish, and the accomplishment and mastery of that task is supposed to be the component of fun, quote unquote. So whatever mechanic it happens to be, card drawing and deck building, dice rolling and stat optimization and dumping, it is the mastery and extension of that mechanic that is the fun, quote unquote, of the game, or at least a component of what drives the fun.
Thank
I
you.
like that.
Would the mechanics also include elements that are affected by a player's actions, like crumbling floors?
Yeah, they certainly can. Yeah, that would be a mechanic of the game because it reacts to what the player's doing. It gives them new options and limits and et cetera, et cetera.
A very specific mechanic, I guess.
Yeah, but it is. And what we're looking at mainly here, at least according, we can definitely go into depth if you have questions, but what we're going to try and focus on are very common mechanics. So for instance, the jump in a 2D platformer is a very central mechanic. There are different kinds of jumps in different kinds of 2D platformers, and how that jump works really drastically affects the gameplay. So let's just go.
Yeah, sure. I mean, let's even just talk about jump. I worked on a Unity game. It basically involved a overstressed writer falling into a cave of despair, literally, and then needing coffee to drag himself out. But it was a side falling game. But the jumping mechanic was to jump from between one side of the pit to the other side of the pit, and then he could slide jump or he could just straight jump. And then the whole point was to avoid obstacles of despair and then find coffee. And so it's a side scroller turned sideways, but it's still the same mechanic of I am jumping to avoid things or get things. And that is, I would say, in a side scroller, the basic mechanic. I am jumping and moving to get things and or avoid things.
And if you look at something like, say, Cave Story, has a jump that you have a lot of control over that jump. When you're in the air, you can kind of move and wiggle back and forth, and you get more devices that allow you to jump and fly and float in various ways. And if you contrast that with another game like, say, Super Meat Boy, where you don't have a lot of control once you've jumped. You have some, but it's decidedly less, and it's a lot more destructive to your character. It's a lot harder to navigate, but that's the point. So you immediately respawn, and the point is to just, it's a meat grinder, and you're made of meat. Like,
or even in the same series, right? Like, think about the jump in the original Super Mario versus the jump of the current Marios now. That is a whole different story. I am horrible at Super Mario, but I am okay at Super Mario Sunshine. And I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that in Mario you have one jump. In Super Mario Sunshine you have like, what, 20 different jumps? So I just couldn't master that one jump, but I could master some of the jumps in Sunshine.
which is definitely an aspect of 3D platformers too, that they started developing. It's like, you know what, one jump isn't quite as adequate to get around in a 3D environment. So if you have a 3D environment that where your character only has one jump, jumping's probably not going to be that central to the gameplay. Or maybe you deliberately want to limit it. Yeah, or you deliberately want to limit it.
Make it the most difficult thing in the world.
Yeah.
Another very brilliant question. I've been around these for quite a while, but I hear mechanics and I hear platform. What is a platform?
Ooh.
Yeah. In this case, as a genre, a platformer is generally a game that is characterized by gameplay that requires you to jump across or onto or up around several platforms. So it's one that's
literally platform.
Yeah, so you might have a floating platform in the air, you might have a tree or a mushroom that serves as a surface for them, all sorts of surfaces for them to land
Okay,
on.
sorry.
No, that's
That-
good.
that-
But however, it might be confusing because in the gaming publishing sense, a platform is basically the platform, the media form that it's going to be released on. So
That's what I was
it
thinking.
could be released on a console platform, it could be released on a PC platform. So that, you have to really it's context, right? Like, which platform are they talking about?
And
So-
as I hear it in writing, is it kind of synonymous with genre?
Oh my goodness, in writing it's a whole different
That's
Yeah.
what I was thinking. I'll be quiet.
No, you're great. We're happy to answer questions.
It is good to differentiate from it. Let us just say that the writing platform is a lot more complex than the scope of this panel.
Yeah.
A lot of road
You're talking about a literal platform.
Yeah, in this case, it's someone landing on a platform within the game. So that is an example of a common game mechanic. Though jumps are in all sorts of games, platformers and non-platformers, but how they function varies from game to game. And if you get the wrong jump, in the wrong game, that can really foil your gameplay. Kind of an example of that is with some first-person platformers. First-person platforming can be extremely difficult because in real life, yeah, we run and we jump all the time, but in real life, I can see my feet. I am physically aware
Well,
of
you
where my
don't
feet
see
are.
it. You have a sense for it, right?
Yeah,
you have like
yeah.
a physical sense of it.
I have other senses beyond sight to tell me where my feet are and where they're going to land and whether they have landed. In a video game, you don't have that. All you have is visual, and if you look down, you often can't see your feet, depending on the game. And that makes platforming in first person very difficult. And there are a lot of games out there that have tried to rely on that didn't do that very well. And some that have pulled off first person platforming quite well.
And they're like common cheats, right? Like, so if you've played any of the Assassin's Creed series or any like 3D platformer where there's jumping involved, they have ledge magnetism, which means that when a character gets close enough to a ledge that should be safe, then the game's like, you know what? You're close enough. Let's just stick you on that ledge. Because this game isn't about mastering the jumps. The jumps are mechanics to help you attain exploration. So adventure games, I'm saying, is another platform, and they're about exploration and discovery. So if your game, if a mechanic of a game that is difficult is kind of ancillary to the enjoyment of the game, don't make it so difficult, right?
Another example is Portal, which is a game that's all about first-person jumping and platforming, but they do a similar thing where if you jump at a portal, you can make a portal in the wall, and when you jump at that to try and go through it, it will zero you in on that portal automatically. Because again, this is a game about puzzle solving. It's about figuring out the physics that you need to use to get through all these obstacles and move on. It's not about mastering this mechanic and landing precisely like some other games are.
If I'm sorry, and then
No, please,
but
please.
quick counter, is anybody here Destiny players? Yeah, we gotta get Marty here.
Well,
Destiny
I-
players, Rise of Iron. Have you played Rise of Iron?
Yeah.
Okay, so in Rise of Iron, you know, there's this giant mountain you need to climb. And there's just one stupid achievement up there. One, that is it. But it is a 2-hour climb. And this game is not a platformer. So that is like, it drives me crazy. But again, it's at that point though, it's the game mastery is all about, well, if you're trying to achieve 100%, we want these achievements to be like Olympic trials.
That has the
Okay.
justification,
But-
but it is
yeah.
ancillary.
But the game itself, the social space game itself, has no platform management, has no platform magnetism, has no forgiving qualities for you to jump from platform to platform. Yet they have one of the hardest achievements in the game, up on a 2-hour-long climb mountain that has no save points and has no climbability whatsoever. So yeah, we'll talk about that, Bungie. Thank you very much. But, yeah.
No, I think that's a really interesting discussion because for me, I don't really like games like that, which is a big turnoff for me, which is why I don't play a lot of video games because I can't master the mechanics in order to play the game successfully. So, for example, one of my husband's favorite games is Castlevania.
Oh my goodness.
I cannot play even 5 minutes.
Jump
of
there,
it.
And that is an example of a game where the whole point is to learn to control these jumps very precisely.
Exactly.
It is about mastery.
Exactly, and so because I'm unable to do that, those aren't the kinds
This
of
is the girl who
games
destroys me in StarCraft, let's be honest.
Well, that's the thing. I can do PC games. I can't do this. For some reason, my thumbs just aren't that quirky.
So that's a prominent mechanic in a lot of video games. On the other side, in RPGs, we have some very common mechanics that pop up. One of the most central for most RPGs, or even most board or card games, well, not so much card games, is dice rolling.
Absolutely.
You roll dice. You might have dice that have different amount of sides. They might have different symbols on them. And what type of dice you're using, how you're rolling them, when you roll them, is all a very central mechanic that comes up in a lot of games, and it will very much affect the type of gameplay you do.
Exactly. And something to remember about dice is you definitely need to kind of, if you're not a genius at math, you do need to practice and see the probabilities that you are getting in the dice mechanics that you have, because a D10 system will be completely different from a D20 system, which will be completely different from a D6 system that uses 12 dice at a time. And so you really have to kind of decide what you want the gameplay to look like and experiment with the kinds of dice play, because it's going to be different every single time. A lot of dice is not chance, it's math. And so you have to kind of experiment with what happens in those probabilities and in those exchanges as you're using those dice.
And math is one of those elements that's like, this is something to take into consideration. How much math do you want your players to do? Because, for instance, if I'm playing my 3.5 min-max monk, my 3.5 edition Dungeons and Dragons, you can get absurd levels of dice there, and I'm pulling out 4 dice to roll for my attacks and another 20 dice for all the damage that they do. I have to math and keep track of which one is what and what it is doing. It's a lot of mental legwork. I'm okay with that. That's why I'm there. I came for that. That's a big turnoff for a lot of other players, which is why more recent editions of D&D tend to tone that down. They tend to simplify it. They tend to limit the opportunities to create these ludicrous damage cascades.
Well, isn't that interesting, right? Because then you're basically saying that this game mechanic is, the mastery of the game mechanic is to understand the rolling of more dice. And to reward you for that mastery, they give you more dice to roll.
But it is really fun when you have like a box and you have to like just tip 60 dice into the box and count them all out. That, I mean, there's just something really fun about that. Not for everyone, but it is really satisfying for some people.
And the not for everyone element is another thing. Gaming is such a widespread phenomenon. Like, there are so many types of games in so many different mediums that you have to remember when you're making a game that you're not making it for everyone. Just like when I write a novel, I am not writing that for everyone. I do not expect fans of Harlequin romances to pick up one of my stories and enjoy that. That is not my goal.
And my friend writes for Harlequin, so this is especially funny for me.
But you know, everyone has their target audience, so you need to know who you're playing for. If you want to make a game like Castlevania or like that section of Destiny, and you want it to be about mastery, and it's going to be painstakingly difficult, and it's just going to be like running a cheese grater across your skin. Some people want that. Some people want a game that's that hard and that gives them that sense of accomplishment when they beat it. There's a market for that. It might not be your market. And so you need to know who you're aiming at, what you want out of this game.
May I jump in on that?
Yes.
And I think that actually that's possibly one of the core ideas of publishing. So if you're talking about going back to platforms, as in the publishing vehicle of a platform, is that the more wider an audience you're shooting for, the less intense, I guess, or dedicated you would expect your fans to be. Like, if that's EA's publishing platform, is we release a lot of games that's meant for general consumption, and they're not typically for hardcore gamers. Yeah. And then the more targeted your niche can be, then you can expect your players to be more targeted, which means you can expect your players to undergo more harrowing mechanics. I feel like that's a logical trade-off. The wider the audience, then the more surface the mechanics have to be, because it has to appeal to a wide amount of people. The more targeted the audience, the deeper the mechanics can be. Which is why that Bungie can get away with a 2-hour platform fest on a game that's not even a platform, because the people who are playing Destiny are really dedicated.
Yeah, we really play it.
And one place you can actually really see that is board games, party games, things that are meant for family settings. You can definitely see the game mechanics are very simple because they're meant to be picked up quickly, picked up by children, that kind
Like
of
the
thing.
Game of Life that has no game mechanics whatsoever.
Exactly. So you can definitely compare those because they're made for different audiences. Absolutely.
Yeah. And I was going to use the example of the Lego video games, which can be a lot of fun, but they're definitely made for a very broad, very young audience. We want everyone to be able to pick these up. My 4-year-old can pick up your average Lego game and unlock a whole lot of characters, overcome a lot of obstacles. I still have fun playing them, which is one of the more impressive things about those. But I don't go there if I want a challenge.
Yeah. And I played them too, and then I get there I'm like an hour in, and I'm just like, how am I going to min-max my character? Yeah. And that brings up, again, a good point, is that wide appeal doesn't mean that the game mechanics aren't fun.
Oh yeah, yeah. And so I'd like to jump back to that topic real quick, if we can, if everyone's done. The idea that these game mechanics are supposed to be fun. That is kind of a central part. Like, there's narrative in video games, and not all video games have a full narrative. There's usually some sense of some vague story, unless you have something as bare bones as Bejeweled or Pong or one of these. And narrative can pull people through a story, but mechanics can as well. Sometimes the story is just peripheral and the mechanics are why people are there. You could compare a Diablo game to a Torchlight game. Torchlight, the mechanics, we're there to have this roguelike experience. We want to go down to the dungeon, we want to kill a bunch of monsters, we want to have a bunch of exciting battles, collect a bunch of loot, level up, and then go do it all over again and again and again. And the story is just a bare bones excuse to keep doing that. It's there to give us an achievement catch or a
It's a
marker
very
to
thin
reach.
thread to walking from cemetery to desert to dungeon.
Yeah,
to
exactly. Whereas in
astral plane.
Diablo, they're aiming for a much more narrative experience. They have almost identical gameplay, but they focus much more on the story. And so the less you're going to focus on that story, the less you're going to have a draw from that, the better those mechanics need to be. They should always be great. You know, ideally, our story and our mechanics will all always be wonderful.
In a perfect world.
In a perfect world, yeah. But you should probably go in knowing, I'm going to focus on this first. If I'm going to let one slide a little bit, based on what my audience wants, it's going to be the story or it's going to be...
Well, especially if you're trying to make video gaming, designing video game as a business,
Yeah.
you are really looking for what's known as an MVP, a minimum viable product. What is that product that I can generate, that I can like market and sell, right? And then so if you've ever gone to Solid Gaming Con, you'll see a lot of people, indie developers, who are in different parts of their MVP. Like they want their, oh, well, I have a demo, and this demo is supposed to, but this is, so I'll just go on this really quick. Like, so this demo is meant to attract backers. Its job is to tell other people who have money, hey, this is what my game can do. Can you please support it with money? And then there'll be other people who have like maybe their betas or their betas. It's like, hey, this is what my game can do. I'm trying to attract people who want to play it and get excited for it. And then there's final products, and this is what my game can do. I want you to pay money to pay for it. So these are different levels of MVP. And so the mechanics have been focused on to that level. A demo to a publisher has not as much polish as a beta to gamers, which is hopefully not as much polish as the final product, even though it's
Yeah.
And I think that's a really interesting, I don't know, maybe even balance, because I have an uncle who's been working on a game for well over a decade, and it's been in beta for a decade.
So he's basically
Yeah.
token. He's
Basically.
doing the token path for his video game.
Exactly. Well, and it's not video games, board
Not a
games.
board game, sorry.
Which is really interesting. And so he takes it everywhere, trying to get people to play it and see what mechanics work and what don't. And it's changed drastically over the 10 years because he's getting people to play it, and he has a lot of input into it. So that's a really
Yeah. And that right there is how you find the mechanics you want. Is playtesting and playtesting. See what is fun for people. Some people they're not going to mesh with whatever your game is, and you're going to see that usually if they're just kind of like, I don't get this, I don't like this, or if they come back with feedback like, yeah, that was okay, but I want it to be something completely different. They're probably not who you're after. But the people who come in and play it and they're like, yeah, this is great, I wish I could do a bit more of this. Those are the people you want to pay attention to and go, okay, what are they enjoying, and what can I do to make this even better for them? So let's look at some more common game mechanics then for some of the genres we talked about here, maybe some RPGs. And as far as tabletop gaming card games go, what kind of mechanics are you all interested in hearing about?
Well, one that's really common that I think crosses pretty much every genre barrier. Can we talk about death mechanics?
Oh, yeah, great.
You may be wanting to know what do you mean by death mechanics? Like,
Well, death mechanics.
they're like ragdoll physics, or they're about
No, like
oh, the idea that there is death.
Like how
does your game handle
how
death?
permanent the death
Death
is.
is.
Yeah.
like it's like it's
So-
a struggle in tabletop RPGs or like super stories based.
Yeah.
Different video games handle it different ways. What do you guys think?
You play Destiny, so you understand this. Like even in one game, death mechanic can be different. So, so I feel like in Destiny, it's a balancing of death equals loss of opportunity to gain points, right? And then so in some gaming modes, like if it's Clash, whereas you're just shooting people, then death is points, which means death equals losing. But in other mechanics, like Overwatch, death might just be the opportunity to lose, the opportunity to kill other people, but it also might be a noble sacrifice at a very important point that will win the game. So I died and sacrificed for my team to win the game. So sometimes death is always negative, and sometimes death can be tactical. And it really just depends on how your point system is set up and how your resurrection system is set up, etc. I would say that's
Okay.
but in tabletop, right, death is pretty permanent. So you want to talk about that, Mari?
Yeah, for sure. I think it really depends on the tone of the game. Do you want it easy for the characters to die? So for example, I play a lot of Call of Cthulhu, and it is easy for your character to die because it's a horror game, right? And so definitely things are on the line. Every monster in the game can definitely kill you in one shot, and so you're basically running away the entire game. And so they made it really easy to die because you only have 8 hit points. And all the monsters do like 20 damage. And so that's the mechanic that they chose because it was a horror game. Whereas Dungeons and Dragons is a little bit different, right? Because
Really,
you don't
20 dice? 20 dice? That's ridiculous.
right, because you not only have your hit points, you have armor, you have magic, you have healing, right? You have all of these things that facilitate the character not dying right away.
Because it makes you feel like you've earned something, right?
Right,
Like,
absolutely.
my character is indestructible.
Look how much
Right.
damage I can absorb.
And then death actually is very scary because you inputted so much time.
Exactly, and if you have a campaign that's lasted years, you don't want your character to die because you have so much invested in their survival. You know how many game hours have you invested? How much money have you invested in your armor, right? And so death in that case is horrifying. Maybe even more in a death game because you weren't supposed to die, and it did happen
Supposed to
anyway.
be godlike. And then you guys, you're talking about Diablo, right? And the Diablo has this season system where you start a season, and then when their character dies, they die permanently, but just for that
Temporary
season.
hard.
So that's a nice, interesting. Like it's right there in the middle, right? It's like, well, it's not first-person shooter quick where you revive in 10 seconds, but it's not D&D permadeath.
So
It's in between.
yeah, the question of death is really, and any mechanic is, why is this here? Why do we die in this game? Because we don't die in every game. It's a game of life. You ironically don't die. There's no death at the end of life.
Have you ever
There's no
wondered
death at
about
any point in life.
the meaning of life?
Yes.
Have you ever asked the question, why are you alive?
Yeah.
What are you doing?
A
Why
lot
am
of
I
work
staying
is,
this
I'm not
stupid
going to
dinner?
die in Monopoly because a death in Monopoly would not serve a purpose in the game.
It really does. Yeah.
Whereas if I pull out Betrayal at House on the Hill, death is quite possible and quite scary because death in that game is permanent. You die and you're out of the game whether the game goes on or not. That's some pretty harsh death.
And then Destiny death is like, if at all, is just worth a cuss word and then you move
Yeah.
on. I press the square button.
Technically speaking, in Monopoly, bankruptcy is death because it
It
is
functions
permanent.
like death, yes, and that's a good point. That's a very good point.
So there
What
are
we're
some
calling
games where
death.
death equals losing the game. And then there are some games where death is just a temporary obstacle. Maybe you have to go start back a little ways, but it's not
You're
over.
right, yeah.
The game's not over.
Yeah, and another contrasting with that is several cooperative games that I've seen. I've got one that's oh man, I just blanked on the. It's a game where you're a bunch of explorers on an island that is sinking. into-
Forbidden Island.
Forbidden Island. Thank you.
I
Thank
love
you.
that game.
Forbidden Island and Forbidden Desert. And in that
I
game,
already want to play this game. Never heard of it, but
It's-
just
it's
saying,
fun.
It's
just
fun.
that, I'm already like, I need to buy this game.
yeah, it's we played it with my nieces and nephews and had just a terrifyingly good time. But no, death in that game, you're supposed to have 2 to 4 characters. We played it with 6. It still was harrowing. If one character dies, that's it. Everyone loses the game, and that's completely different from Betrayal at House on the Hill. In that game, if one person dies, the rest of you can keep going, depending on who that character was in the game.
Go on without me.
Yeah, and it's happened. I've had games. We had a game recently playing with my neighbors where my wife and my friend's wife won because I was the traitor trying to hunt them down, and my friend nobly sacrificed himself in time for them to get out. It was beautiful. It was wonderful, and the game went on after he died, and when the rest of us played, and he just had to sit on the sidelines, which is a pretty harsh. That's kind of the harshest death you can do in a game, in my mind.
Well, I think, yeah, the ability to not play the game as a punishment, I think, is one of the most severe. So
Yeah.
when you have a mechanic that prevents a player from playing, you do have to watch out, like, is this going to be fun? Is there going to be a player who just doesn't get to play for, like, ages and ages? Is that going to be fun for them? And
Risk.
even, technically, right, yeah, like risk. Or even, like, think about the stun mechanic. This is a problem we talk about in shooters or MOBAs. If you're a MOBA player, a stun mechanic prevents a player from playing for a set amount of time. It might be a few seconds, but that's it. You're preventing them from playing for a time. And is that a balanced mechanic, right? Like things like knockback and stun, those mechanics prevent a player from playing. So what is that endpoint? Is it a punishment? Is the player going to enjoy it if they suffer it too much? Like they always talk about certain games where you'll get an insta-lock. If you heard of that term, insta-lock? It's basically a way you can choose a game to make another player be permanently stunned, unconscious, or knocked back forever.
Oh, a stun lock?
Yeah, the insta-locks, any of those locks, right? Stun lock, knockback lock. So basically, you've developed a mechanic where, yes, one player is really powerful, they're doing a game mechanic, but now the other player who's receiving it, they're not able to play until they die. is that enjoyable or not? That's a question, right?
And I think that also kind of plays in with card games that have mechanics.
And StarCraft, who Zerg rushes me, so basically I spend the entire game trying to defend myself and not being able to play because she kills me in 5 minutes. Is that fair or not? Discuss. No.
But anyway, that brings up a really interesting point, which is balance. Right? Balance in a game. Are you giving one side more of an advantage than another person? So they essentially can't play a game. So in a card game that might be something like card draw, do you have a card that prevents the other person from playing cards or having cards in their hand? Right? That essentially neuters them and doesn't allow them to play anymore. And so you definitely have to, if you are having different mechanics that, stun people or prevent people from playing or engaging in any way, you have to see how does that play in with just the balance of the sides, the balance of the pieces, the balance of the abilities, or balance of the cards, right? Because you want to make sure that it's still fun. So even if maybe if you're temporarily stunned or locked back, right, is there something that they can do to circumvent it, to gain ahead again, Or are they completely done?
Are there counter mechanics or not? Like, can I build resistances to stun, which in some games you can, in some games you can't? Can you, are you able, as a skill, able to dodge stuns, right? Like, because some can be dodged, some can't. Like, and if it's a skill that can't be dodged, like, that's a problem in some games. Sometimes you have a game with a character who can stun a person, and there's no way to avoid it. Is that fair? Is that not fair? Discuss, etc.
And another thing to look at when you're looking at the why of the death in games is how permanent do you want this to be? What effect do you want this to have? There are some games where if you die, you load the game. Like you have to go back and restart, and that's it. There are other games where you can't do that at all. Diablo, if you die, you pop up in town and you have to go get your body. You cannot undo that death. And those each have a different effect on the gameplay. One, it's kind of about mastery. It's about you have to get through this section. We are not giving you any way past it. And you just have to keep loading and keep trying again until you do. The other one is saying, no, I want this death to keep meaning something. You're going to lose something, or you're going to be at risk of losing something if you don't get to that body. And so they create a different kind of tension.
Or like Skyrim, right? Like the games like Skyrim, where a death means, well, now you get to reload and see how many Praetorian guards you can kill before they kill you.
Yeah.
So sometimes death is just another form of exploration. It says it's a reward or a punishment for, well, the mechanic you were trying to try out did not successfully employ. So try again.
And then in some games like Super Meat Boy, death is one of the central mechanics. You have to die over and over and over again just to get through it. It's a trial and error. Keep looking until you find the right spot and the right path, and you get it just right, and then you move on and you do it again. So, there it comes down to why are we dying, and what do we want it to serve? What can that do for us? How about some other mechanics? Anyone have any that pop into mind? Let's talk a bit about card drawing. Different kinds of cards and how.
Oh man.
Having a hand in a game. Lots of games you have some cards that you're holding out. Now that hand might be in your hand. It might be on the table. It might be partly in your hand and partly on the table where people can see it. It might be on the table face down where you can't see it. There are a lot of different ways to use cards and the drawing of cards in a game, and they all do that. And they're in Uno. You all have that is a pure card game. It's all in your hand, but you're playing in the middle. What can card drawing do for you? The dice doesn't. And a lot of there are randomizers. Well, man, yeah, we can even back up wider.
From the mechanic of randomization.
The randomizer. A randomizer introduces randomness into your game. So dice are one very prominent, very useful way to do that, so that everything is not directly. It's not just I say I do this and then it's done. You have to roll a skill check or something. And dice and cards can be another randomizer, and they can be a tool shed for you as well.
But I think you have to think about card draw if you are going to be thinking about cards. There are card games that I have played where you don't draw very many cards, hardly at all, and then if you don't ever draw cards, you really can't win the game. And that's not really that fun. And you're like, why am I playing card games if I don't really have any cards to play? And then there are card games where you're drawing lots and lots of cards, and you have an unlimited card hand, right? And so you're just amassing cards. So I think of games like this. This actually has a card hand limit, but only on your turn, which is like Munchkin, where you can just, if you're playing with 20 people, you can amass cards on other people's turns until your turn, and you have just a fistful of cards. And whoever has the most cards wins, essentially, in that game. And so you have to kind of think about that right? Like, is it an advantage to have more than that many cards? If it's too much of an advantage, what do you do to curb that advantage? Do you have a limit on how many cards people can have, a limit on how many cards people can draw, a limit on how many cards they can play per turn?
Make cards more expensive.
Yeah.
Dominion and Magic pretty much
Absolutely.
leave those restricted features.
Right.
I think what the central idea behind all common mechanics that we're getting at here is analyze everything. Like, what is it doing in your game? Is there another option for how to do it? Would that be better? Is it, you try it out, is it better? No. That it just, what are you trying to achieve, and are these all serving that central goal?
And I bet there are some games that you picked up and you've tried them and they were, like I said, they were enjoyable, but then you don't come back to them, right? And then there are some games where you can't stop going back to. I think that's the difference, is that you can tell the difference between a game that was given some surface treatment, I grabbed the popular mechanic, put some graphics on it, and it's out. And sure, it's entertaining. And then there are some games where you can tell the developers have analyzed every aspect of this game and brought it back to the same ethos. Is this fun? Is this serving a purpose? And when you play it, you feel it, because every mechanic feels like you want to explore every mechanic and you want to keep doing this over and over again. Like they call it either replayability. Is you know, like, are there games that you just replay over and over again? Is it because the mechanics intrigue you? You know, like, there is thought put into there that sometimes doesn't equate to like how much money this game is making or how much money was put into it, but there is. You know.
So I want to ask a question real quick about, have you ever worked on games or game mechanics where the point of the mechanic was actually not to be fun, where there was some other goal?
Not to be fun.
Yeah, where there's some,
Yes.
yeah. Let's see it. Go ahead.
Okay, I play a lot of gacha games. Does anybody know what that is? A gacha game? It's a type of mobile game that got really popular in Japan, as a lot of game mechanics do. And it's about spending money to get very unique things. Like, because in most random games, if you play long enough, you will get everything, right? Like, that's the idea, you know? But in these games, you're paying, if in the normal play of the game, if you're not spending any money, you will not see about 50% of the game content. It's just locked behind these really high, very low rates of randomness that you'll never be feasibly able to get unless you're super lucky. And so the idea is you spend money to get access to these higher features, right? So I play one called, is any Final Fantasy fans out there? Final Fantasy? I play Final Fantasy Brave Exvius, which is the mobile version of let's take all the Final Fantasy characters, put them in an arena, let them have to fight each other. Sounds super cool, but guess what? You don't get to see your favorite characters unless you're willing to spend, like, the forums do statistics. They'll do statistic rolls, and statistics of games is like a whole other thing that you can talk about, because I love math. I'm a math major. This is like why I play games. I love the math behind it. But somebody pointed out that, like, on average, to get what's known as a 6-tier character, which are the best characters in the game, you have to be spending $1,000. This is a free mobile game. And they're saying that if you want a 6-tier character, you are probably going to have to spend the equivalent of $1,000 or that equivalent of game time. And so that is a mechanic that is intentionally not fun, but it's meant to generate money.
Yeah.
I have an example. I feel bad, like, talking about other people's games. Like, this wasn't fun because it's weird. But one game that my husband just recently bought on Steam was Stanley Parable. Has anyone played that game? Like, it's not fun, but it's intriguing. You're just, like, running around in this office building, trying everything, like trying doors, opening file cabinets, you know, and there's this guy that just narrates the whole time, and it's really distressing, and I get anxiety when I play that game. And
So
he
is
just
that
gets
because it's
frantic.
not fun for you, but does your husband find it fun?
I
That's the thing.
did.
He doesn't.
Okay.
He doesn't find it fun, but he finds it funny.
See, and that's actually, as I'm thinking about this, I'm thinking that maybe we should expand our definition from it. These
Fun.
mechanics don't necessarily need to be fun. They need to be cathartic in some way. They need to grant some sort of satisfaction.
I'd love to jump in on this.
Yeah.
Like, the lead developer of, I read too much gaming mechanics, gaming magazines. The lead developer of Skyrim said that there are essentially 3 kinds of players, and when he makes Skyrim, he makes something for each of those 3 kinds of players. He calls them the warrior, the mage, and the scholar. The warrior, he wants to hit something and that thing explode. He wants instant gratification for an input. The mage, he's willing to spend a few hours learning a skill or mastering a sword technique. But when he's mastered it, he wants to be able to kill 100 people with one axe stroke, or destroy 100 birds with one fireball. So they are willing to spend a lot more time for a great investment. And the last player he said was the scholar. The scholar is willing to spend hundreds of hours reading every book in the library in Skyrim, which you know, as if you play Skyrim, every book can be read. And there is no game like gratification for that. You don't get stronger from it. You maybe sometimes you'll gain a little few stat points, or you'll get a new quest, but for the most part, it's just learning more things. And there is no end goal to that other than the fact that I love this world more. I had a friend who, like, as I was in the dungeons, like fighting orcs, trying to get orcish armor, because I'm a power level, I'm a mage. He would sit in Skyrim, he would just go to a town port, sit on a rock, and then watch the sunset turn to sunrise. And for him, he was a scholar. He enjoyed that. So yeah, there are different kinds of fun. There really is. Yeah.
And the example I wanted to give was Spec Ops: The Line. If you played
Ooh.
this is a game that begins like your average,
Shooter.
almost mindless shooter.
It
It's
was.
Battlefield, Call of Metal Duty Honors.
There literally was nothing special about the shooting mechanics. It was a cover shooter.
And but as you get through this game, it goes from being this kind of core gameplay, and but the story turns that into a horrible thing. Like, this is a game about the horrors of war, like almost no video game has ever done before.
Am I the bad guy? Am I the bad guy?
It is their stated goal was basically to make a video game that gave you the feeling and experience of reading Heart of Darkness. Like this, it is a harrowing game. Halfway through that game, I was not playing, even from the beginning of that, I wasn't really playing to have fun. I was playing because this story was darkly, horrifyingly moving in some way. And that's what I mean by catharsis. It was doing something for me that gave me some sort of relief.
It gave you, and maybe it gave you a reward. Like there was some reward. It might not be an in-game reward, but you got rewarded.
I got rewarded. There's a much more narrative type of reward, and it was less about the mechanics. The mechanics were there, and they were commented upon. They were a significant part of the game. They were well thought out for what they wanted to do. In that they were so mediocre and average. Like, it was part of the point was that they were just these average mechanics.
I think what's even more sublime about that game is that I played it again, and I really did try to be the good guy this time, knowing the decision factors that led me to become the bad guy at the end of the story. I tried to be a good guy, and guess what? Those other paths, you still became the good guy. And actually, I found the path that made me even worse. Sorry, good guy, bad guy. I even became a worse bad guy my second playthrough, and it was just like, is this a commentary? Is the game developer trying to say, like, no matter what happens, you're destined to be a bad person?
See, and in a lot of horror games, it's like, we don't necessarily, like, they can be fun. Betrayal at the House on the Hill is so much fun for me. But they can also be dark and scary, but they're still cathartic. You're getting something out of it. So you can have a game where the mechanics aren't necessarily fun, but as long as they are serving that catharsis, that goal, adequately in a good way, then you're on the right track, let's say. We have about 5 minutes if we've got any more questions, and if not, we can just pick a random mechanic and just do a really speak criticism of it, I guess. Anyone? Okay, I'm going to do skill trees and RPGs.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah,
Oh my
yeah,
goodness.
I know. Oh, right, we got it ahead.
What does RPG stand for?
RPG stands for role-playing game. So this is any game, card game, tabletop game, video game, where the idea is basically you're going to take this other person, this persona, or you're going to make a person a persona and pretend to be them. You're going to play that role.
I'll jump on that.
Yes, please.
Okay. Sorry.
No, you're good.
I
You're good.
totally dominated the panel. I'm so sorry. But okay, I played a lot of Fallout and I played a lot of Skyrim back in my day, and I like min-maxing games. Like for some reason they just.
Now,
they
min-maxing, I'll also reference. This is trying to take a character and make it the most ludicrously powerful in a specific way that you can.
Yeah.
You want to push the game mechanics into making something super powerful or super amazing.
And I enjoy the math behind it. I enjoy the math of min-maxing. And then so when I used to play Fall and Skyrim back in the day, and when I say Skyrim, I mean like the whole line of those games,
The Elder Scrolls,
right? I would try to make my character the most ridiculously overpowered it could be. That for me, that was the enjoyment. Because once I got to that part, no part of the game was really a challenge anymore. If you can one-hit kill the god of Morrowind, then really what other threat is there left in the game? Because in that game, one-hit kills doesn't count as an illegal kill, so I could literally kill anybody in the game and not suffer any consequences. So it broke the game, but I enjoyed that journey of breaking the game. And that was when I was younger. I would spend the hours trying to figure out how to basically break a game, and that was enjoyable. And now, as an older player, I feel like I enjoy the narrative. So now instead of trying to make the most powerful player of the game, I want to go down the skill trees that will grant me the most enjoyable experience. So when I start Skyrim, when I start Fallout, I decide, well, do I want to be, like, so let's say for Fallout, it's post-apocalyptic guns. Do I want to be a long gunner? Do I want to be a sneaky sniper who also happens to be really good at convincing people? Or do I want to be a guy who carries a really big gun, but for some odd anachronistic reason, is also really talented at pickpocketing? Like, I enjoy those skill trees now. Yeah, I want to play a character experience and have that narrative. And like, sometimes you can get like really cool mods. So for Fallout New Vegas, there was a mod that added hunger. And so now all of a sudden I was like, hey, how cool of a forager could I be and still be a cowboy that can shoot things? That became the aspect, and that skill trees allows you, and I think skill trees and RPGs is almost an inherent mechanism. I know there are RPGs that don't have skill trees, but it's an inherent mechanism because it allows you to create a role for your character, hence role play.
Yeah. It also allows you to make a map of diverse possibilities. Like, you can lay out in front of your players, here are all the things that you can be. Just because you're all taking the same character class, starting from the same point, doesn't mean you all have to be the same thing. We're trying to give you variety and diversity in this experience.
And I think that's really important for collaborative games or party games where you have different people trying to accomplish the same thing, but maybe in different ways. And so you have, in your classic Dungeons and Dragons, you have your tank, you have your healer, you have different things that people can do in that level up tree, right? Where they can just pick those skills and decide that's what I want to be for my group.
Yeah, that's a really good point. There's some games where you can't be everything, so you need other people.
Yeah, and that's actually a really great, if for multiplayer games, you almost don't want anyone to be able to be everything because that's less fun. There's no reason to play as a group if one player can do everything by themselves.
But in Morrowind, it's a single player game, so the skill trees are allowed for you to be. I
break away.
Everything.
100% chameleon armor and Oblivion and you're set.
Exactly right.
All right. If there are no more questions, anything else? I think we're going to call it good for today. Thank you all for coming. Great discussion.